Alrighty, so after 29 years and a lot of hype, a lot of people hassling Adam Sandler and Tim Herlihy to write a script, a sequel for Happy Gilmore 2, we finally have Happy Gilmore 2. So this is going to be, for the most part, a spoiler-free review. I'm going to be very vague about certain plot points. This isn't like Marvel-level spoilers that are at stake here that I could possibly mention, but more or less just certain plot points about the film and the storyline as well, and where Happy is at this point in time. So let's go back to 1996. Actually, let's just go back to the 90s during what I consider Adam Sandler's peak as a comedian and a film star. Not in a bad way, just where I think most of his best work came out. So we had Billy Madison, we had Happy Gilmore, we had The Waterboy, we had The Wedding Singer, we even had Little Nicky, hell, even Bulletproof. I fucking adore Bulletproof. I just think it's a brilliant buddy film that doesn't get enough love. Like, same with Little Nicky. I think it's severely underrated. But those films hit in this pocket of time where with the humor, the characters, the kind of goofball, jokes, it just, for me and a lot of people, gelled. And those characters, those films have somewhat, from my opinion anyway, stayed encapsulated in the 90s. So making a sequel to any of those films that I just mentioned in Sandler's resume was always going to be a tough nut to crack. I feel like if a sequel had to come from one of those films, it had to be in like 1 or 2 years after its initial release date. So for Happy Gilmore, I think ultimately the best way to go about it would have been a 1998, 1999 sequel. Now, going into this film, and I'm going to be very honest, my expectations were low, because you want to try and tape your expectations. It's been a long time. It's been 29 years. After watching this film, I'm glad I had my expectations tapered. There are pockets and moments of those 90 nostalgia feels and humor where it made me laugh out loud. And it didn't make me do the... I actually laughed out loud. And there are a few sequences and a few jokes I had to rewind because I wanted to watch again. And I used to do that all the time with the original VHSs of like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, Waterboy, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, majority of Happy Gilmore 2 doesn't recapture the magic and almost comes off as a little tired, and towards the end, almost like an SNL parody. And it fucking pains me to be saying this. Again, going into this, I wanted to have the expectations tapered. Okay, so let's go into the basic premise of the film without giving too much away. We see Happy Gilmore 29 years later. He's not exactly in the best place he was after the events of 1996's first film, and then a few years after that. He now has 5 kids, and he needs to raise money for his daughter's ballet tuition. So we have one of Sandler's daughters playing his actual daughter, and then he also has 4 sons. All the while, we also have John Daly staying with them. And I'll get into John Daly later. And after that, it's more or less Happy coming out of retirement. It's the underdog story once again. You know, he's got to, shake off the cobwebs. He's got to get his mojo back. He's very rusty and he's hitting the bottle quite a bit because of certain events that have happened since 1996. And he has to work with golfers again, brand new up and coming, more younger golfers. This is a very golfer centric film with a lot of cameos. Most times when I'd see a golfer, I thought that they were an actor, and then you see them act and they can't really act. And I go, well, they must be a real live golfer. And it's not a dig. They're an athlete, not an actor. And essentially it's getting the band back together. We see a lot of cameos from a lot of reoccurring characters that I thought had passed away. Like the Grizzly Adams did have a beard dude from the first film. He's in this one. I'm like, holy shit, he's still alive. That's amazing. Obviously, there is a big void with the loss of Carl Weathers as Chubbs, the jackass guy. I'll say this. The first half of the film, for me, started very strong. We do see a neat little flashback scene with some de-aging on Adam Sandler and Julie Bowen. And from what I saw, it was quite impressive, especially with Sandler. They definitely recaptured his physique and his aesthetic, his look from 1996, like the late 90s in general. But the first half seemingly leans into the dramatic side. And we see that dramatic side in Sandler. And even though it's far removed from what I'm used to with the universe of Happy Gilmore, I kind of liked it. It's like the darker approach to Happy Gilmore. I don't know if it was a subconscious thing for Sandler, because our villain in this film is played by a Safdie brother, one of the Safdie brothers who directed Sandler in Uncut Gems. And that's a very serious, dark, heavy film that I think Sandler was snubbed for when it came to the Oscars. Even though Benny Safdie's character is like a dimwit, a douchebag, and like his whole character is written to have this chronic halitosis that affects everyone. It's a strange decision, but like a very Sandler decision. But yeah, the first half of the film actually weirdly worked for me if it had have been another film. But it's interesting to see Happy put in that situation. And Sandler definitely has the acting chops for it. Now, when it comes to Chris McDonald as Shooter McGavin, I think he goes straight back into the role in the best way possible out of all our reoccurring actors and characters. I think he really leans into the bombastic, I wouldn't say mustache twirling villain, but very theatrical this time around, where he was just an absolute snake in the first one. There's more theatrical elements, villainous elements to his character. Now, what I appreciate on a whole with this film is this isn't a rinse and repeat situation. I like that instead of doing that and having it backfire on them, they're trying to do something different. Adam Sandler and Tim Herlihy, who returned to write this script, which is great. There definitely is elements where you can feel that that's their writing once again, like how they did it in 1996. And I definitely think Chris McDonald really has a nice return to form as Shooter McGavin. I won't go into the specifics of him and Happy's relationship and where they are at certain points in the film. That's something you need to see. But I kind of respect that they went against the grain and did something different, and it just wasn't a carbon copy of the first film. You know, we see that a lot with legacy sequels that come like 20, 30 years later. I think a prime example of a film, a sequel that came decades later that absolutely nailed it was Top Gun Maverick. Like, that is like S tier for me. Now, we also have Ben Stiller back as Hal-El, and he has a lot more screen time this time around. I actually enjoyed his performance. I think he was great. He hasn't really missed a beat, especially with the way he modulates his voice. Oh, hi, Mr. Gilmore. Just going to extend arts and crafts time by an hour and a half. Hi, Grandma. Now, this could be considered a possible spoiler, but I'll just put spoiler alert anyway. The actress who played Grandma passed away quite some time ago. So obviously she's not a part of this film. You know, there are references to her. We do see a picture of her hanging in Happy's car. But there's an exchange between Happy and Hal-El that actually made me laugh out loud. And it was all in Stiller's performance and also Sandler's performance. I'm paraphrasing, but it pretty much goes, "Oh, hi there, Mr. Gilmore. How's Grandma doing?" "Oh, you know, Grandma died 15 years ago." "Oh, that's just super." Just little shit like that. Those are the pockets of humor that made me laugh. Now, when it comes to the humor, like I said, I had a lot of laugh out loud moments, and it was simple shit, much like Sandler's films of the 90s, where I'd rewind and watch it again and again and just be like, oh. There's like a joke where he hits the ball and there's a snake that he hits and it goes onto one of the golfers, and it's all in one shot, and it's pretty much like a silhouette, and I don't know why. I just found that fucking hilarious. But there's another back and forth between Shooter McGavin and Benny Safdie's character about a shoe and an ass, and it's just, I don't know, it just snowballed into this Sandler stupid joke that reminded me of the jokes of the 90s. So amongst Chris McDonald returning as Shooter McGavin and, you know, having some good comedic levity, along with Sandler, you know, Sandler has his pockets of greatness, and obviously Ben Stiller as Hal-El. John Daly actually was another standout for me. The dude's deadpan humor was brilliant. And the story beat is he's living with Happy and his kids in the garage, and he's kind of almost like the Wilson from Home Improvement of the Happy Gilmore universe, like trying to be the voice of reason, giving, you know, old wisdom, and he just fails miserably, but it's done in such a brilliant comedic way. It was definitely a highlight for me. Now, whilst Happy is getting his mojo back, there's this like extreme golf tournament going on. It's not like golf of old. It's like extreme, you know, titties out and everything, and like sponsored by Red Bull. And there's another subplot with Haley Joel Osment playing a golfer and them going up against the extreme golfers. That is, for me, when it turns into an SNL parody. It's like when we saw Mike Myers and Dana Carvey come back as Wayne and Garth for SNL and Super Bowl commercials and all that. And it just seems like a parody, like they've just slapped the costume back on. You're like, oh my God, everyone has aged. And I understand that. It's been 29 years. And I don't know if it's because of the sheen, the aesthetic, the look of the film, because going back to the first Happy Gilmore a couple of weeks ago, It's a damn good looking film, and I'm actually really excited to see the 4K restoration of that film. It's shot beautifully. It was shot in Canada, and they reshot this one in Canada, I believe. And it's funny, watching the first one, I'm always like, that does not look like the US at all. But yeah, I don't know if it's because there was no beautiful film grain aesthetic this time around. It's very clean and polished and not over digitized, but there is a big shift from the aesthetic of the first one, which I feel like I said, was photographed lit beautifully. Now, this time around, we do have a cast of new characters, some that are family members of previous characters from the first film. And I feel like they're possibly shoehorned in just for the sake of recognition and like, hey, see what we did here. So guys, in the end, I really wish I could say Happy Gilmore 2 hit all the marks, but it didn't. And unfortunately, I think it never could. No matter how on point the script from Sandler and Herlihy was. The first film, along with, say, Billy Madison, The Wedding Singer, Waterboy, Little Nicky, and like I said, even Bulletproof, those films were products of the 90s. And anything that would have followed afterwards with those films should have just stayed in the 90s. Like, we're talking like a sequel 1 or 2 years later to really recapture that lightning in a bottle. Even though you're never really going to properly recapture it, you still are in that bubble of time where everything just seemingly worked. And that's not a dig, that's not a slight. It's just these films gelled at a certain pocket of time. And I think it's just been too long since. I think this is the best sequel you could have gotten at this point of time, 29 years later. Because there are a lot of elements I really liked and dug in this film, and I had laugh out loud moments, though on a whole, it seems like the whole piece just wasn't held together properly and something felt very off. By the end, this film just feels like a giant SNL parody, and yes, I know the first film had cameos, but Travis Kelce, fucking hell, man, why? Look, regardless, if you're a fan of Sandler's films from the 90s, and obviously Happy Gilmore, it's on Netflix, so definitely give it a crack just to see it with your own eyes, make up your own mind. But I think with his films from the 90s, you needed to bang out a sequel a year or two after their initial release. And with that, I'm going to be giving Happy Gilmore 2 2.5 pieces of shit cereal boxes out of 5. Again, it pains me to saying this, but also I was very apprehensive going into this one. I think Sandler and Herlihy tried their absolute best. And they even said in interviews, for years, we just tried to figure something out and people were yearning for a sequel to Happy Gilmore, which I didn't know. Like, I'm content with the first one, but this is obviously a big deal. And this campaign has also been a big deal for me. But like I said, guys, it's on Netflix. Go check it out. Go see it with your own eyes, especially if you're a big fan of the first film, just to see where it's at and where it lies for you. And once you do, let me know down below what you think of Happy Gilmore 2. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.